Good afternoon, Simon. Hello and welcome back to our Backyard Vineyard Project. We are in the process of building the Gavilan Hills Vineyard here at Paradise Ranch. It's getting pretty close. We got our vines delivered the other day. They're a little early, we're a little late, so typically we're behind on our project. But follow along, please subscribe, and hit the notification button also so you'll find all of our new videos. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to Chapter 5. Today we're covering the irrigation we're doing on the vineyard. Up to this point we've put in the posts, we put in the trellis wire, and then we started putting the irrigation in. I've got most of the irrigation done, and I want to show you what we're doing with that. We've installed, or will be installing, probably 1,300 linear feet of half-inch tubing, 5 new valves, and 200 plus 2-gallon emitters, and then later on we'll add another 200 emitters. The next 3 chapters are probably the most important ones. Up to this point we've been building, we've been prepping, we've been digging holes, doing a lot of manual labor. Now all of our planning is coming to a head. We received our vines the other day, and they're still in a dormant stage, and I'm not ready to open them up for another week or so. But right now, the irrigation is probably one of the most important beyond planting the grapes. We've got to get the irrigation in and ready to go before we start planting grapes. Up to this point, our most expensive portion of this project is the irrigation system. Simon's walking around my feet here. The irrigation system should encourage the growth of the vines as much as possible in the first year especially. We want lots of growth, and I want that vine and the root system to really go crazy down below. So our whole plan and what we've got set up here is to encourage the growth of the vines and the root system to really go crazy as much as it can. If you've been following along in the series, you will know that we're in a very hot, dry, arid climate here. It's been pretty cold the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we've had lots of wind like we have today, but in the summer we're going to have days of well over 100 degrees, so I need to get water to these grapes and make sure it gets down to the vines. There's a ton of different ways you can install a backyard vineyard system with irrigation. I'm not going to go all the different options. All I'm going to do is just show you what we've done in our system here, in our vineyard. We're using a standard drip system or a trickle system for our vineyard, where we will have half-inch tubing with emitters coming off the bottom of the tubes for the grapes. So in our system, the very first piece in our system will be the Rainbird controller. It's a Wi-Fi controller that I'm going to be able to control the amount of water going to my vines using my tablet. The controller will then be hooked up to 5 new valves. I have 5 new systems going into the vineyard. The valves are simple. The valve will have, I have the typical valve coming off of my PVC flow coming into the system, coming across to a pressure reducer. The pressure in our house here, the water coming in is high. It's 80 to 100 psi depending on when I check it. And also the gallons per hour, or the gallons per minute coming in, is about 5 to 8. So I have to reduce the pressure because drip irrigation systems need a pressure of 30 or less. So what we're doing is we're reducing it down and then putting in a filter. Now, at Lowe's, I found this piece that is all-in-one. Hopefully it works. We'll find out when we get a little bit further into this, but it was cheaper than buying a pressure reducer and a filter at the same time. So this is a pressure reducer, reduces my pressure down to 30, and it gives me about a 5 gallons per minute flow. On these type of systems, we have really bad water here. And as you can see on the side of our pool, the water gets really bad stuff in it. So what you do is every so often we open these up we clean out the filter, put it back in. Now this one is the best one so far because it's pretty tight screen on it. So it's going to be able to get rid of that sediment that's coming into the filters, because I don't want those emitters, these little emitters, I don't want these little emitters to get clogged up and have to replace them. I still do on a lot of my systems, but the filter works out pretty well. So we've got, like I said, we've got a valve coming in, I've got a pressure reducer and a filter in one system going out to my 1/2-inch PVC, and it goes, as my 1/2-inch PVC goes up to each vine, as you see here, I've got the tube set up, and what I have is the 1/2-inch PVC connects to this sleeve. This sleeve allows me to put the 1/2-inch line and comes up, and then I can have the line go across on the wire. The other day when we were doing the install of these the other day, it was about 50, 60 degrees. Today we're 75, so this is very pliable, very easy to work with. Best day to work with it is like when it's over 75. The other day I couldn't get this in. There was no way that I would have been able to slip this into any one of these sleeves because of the heat. The princess of the house doesn't like when I do this, but I take her hair dryer, and when it's cold out, I blow on the end of the pipe, the drip line. You blow on it a little bit with the hair dryer, then you're able to slip the pipe into the 1/2-inch sleeves. Right now it's so warm out, this stuff is going in and out really easy. So it's not too bad at all. So I've set up a short demonstration here instead of walking you through the vineyard. I'm attaching the 1/2-inch drip line to my trellis wire. I'm using these vine curls. These are vine curls to kind of hold them in place. These are pretty nice because they're made out of the same material as the drip line, so these aren't going to rot over time. I use wire ties as well to keep it fairly nice and straight, as you can see. But these wire ties every year or so, or they're just going to break and I have to replace them. This stuff, these vine curls they're called. Other people have been calling them pigtails, they've been calling them like 3 or 4 different names. It took me an hour or so to actually find these somewhere, and I'll put a link below. But these are amazing little things because it simply just wraps around the wire and the pipe and holds it in place. So as I said, I have the pipe coming out of the ground, the PVC pipe. I've got my 1/2-inch drip line, and it will go along my trellis wire like this. On each trellis wire, all the way at the end, I have a coupler. This coupler is essentially removable. And what this does is allows me to, when I first flush the line, I can drain the whole line. It'll flush any dirt or impediments out of it. So I need to apologize. I'm going to be doing some math here. I wanted to walk through the thinking that we were going through, trying to determine the water and the requirements and when we're going to water. So let me go through some of the math. So don't get lost, don't go anywhere. It's just my thinking on what we are dealing with when working on this vineyard. So as I said, I've got about 80 psi coming in from the local water supply. We reduced that down to 30 psi. I've got 5 to 8 gallons per minute, and I'm going to be able to push about 5 gallons per minute out of the valves in the system here. So 5 gallons per minute times 60 minutes, it's about 300 gallons per hour. 300 gallons per hour. My valve number 1 has 60 vines on it. So 60 vines, and if I run a 2-gallon emitter, that's 60 times 2 gallons. So in an hour, I'm going to run about 120 gallons through that particular valve. So with the system coming in at 300 gallons and 120 gallons going out to my vineyard, that works out pretty well for making sure I've got enough water going to the system. Now when I double that and I add a second emitter on, which I'll go over with in a minute, that second emitter will double that from 120 to 240 gallons. That's my largest valve, so that's the only one that I'm going to be pushing the limit up 240 gallons as opposed to the 300 coming in. The other ones I'm only going to be in the 150 range, so I should be well within the range that I need when I figured out those calculations. So how much water do I need for my vineyard? I looked around, and essentially what I've gotten from talking to the people down in Temecula, I talked to a couple of vineyards down in Temecula, I talked to a private vineyard guy he's got 400 vines, and what I've read, every vineyard is different. You've got to track the water, you've got to look at the plants, so it's a little difficult to determine exactly how much water. But with that in mind, I found a white paper through the UC Davis, which is up by Napa Valley. UC Davis came out with this study that they did on vineyards for young vines. These are young vines, brand new, first year, second year vines. April to May, 6 to 8 gallons. Now remember, this is up in Napa Valley where it's wetter up there than it is down here. So I'm going to need more than this probably. April to May is 6 to 8 gallons. June to July, 10 to 12 gallons. August, 12 to 16 gallons per week. That's gallons per week. And September to October, 8 to 10 gallons. You start backing off the number of gallons per week as you head into the winter. And that white paper talked about full production. When you're in full production with the beginning of the season, this is before fruit, you'll need 12 to 16 gallons a week. When you have full fruit production, you're going to need 18 to 24 gallons per week per vine. So when you start thinking about that, that's quite a bit. And I'm going to have to kind of figure out how to deal with that going forward over the next couple of years. So the ideal situation here is to do our watering at night. We do it at night when it's dark, when it's cool. So at the hot part of the day, that water has already soaked into the ground and gone down to the roots, and we don't get as much evaporation. The problem I have is I've already got 18 valves running on my grass, my plants, palm trees, everything else. So I've got 18 valves. Those 18 valves, they run 15 minutes each. 18 times 15 comes out to about 4.5 hours. So I've already got 4.5 hours of time taken up at night. So I'm going to have to start dealing with this later, because if I take my 5 gallons, or my 5 valves that I'm adding in, and I do the low end, which is 6 gallons a week, that's 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. That's 2.5 hours. If I get into 12 gallons a week, 6 days a week, 60 hours, that's 5 hours. I was doing some more calculations. If I get full fruit production, I'm going to have these valves running. The 5 valves are going to have to be running probably somewhere around 6 to 7, 8 hours. I may have to put on additional emitters, but then that becomes a problem because the amount of water coming in may not be enough to handle the initial emitters. So this is one of the things that I'm going to be dealing with and trying to get water down to that root system of my vines. So there are half gallon, 1 gallon, 2 gallon, I think there's a 3 and a 4 gallon emitter that you can put into your drip system. I'm using a 2 gallon emitter, primarily because it's easy to divide 2 gallons into an hour. That means every half hour is 1 gallon. When you go down to Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever, you can get these little punches, and you put a punch in and you stick your hand in and you push the punch then, put the punch in. Problem is, these little punches slip off and they jam your hand. And I've had a lot of blood on these pipes when I got done after jamming my hand. So I found this one over at Lowe's. It's not bad, it's a nice little punch. It makes it real easy for you to just take onto it and punch. The only problem is that my argument with them is it's a left-handed punch, because I have to turn it over like this to put the punch in. And it's that simple. You go like that, puts the hole in. You take your emitter, stick your emitter in the hole, and then the emitter's ready to go. You've seen 100 videos on that. So I just wanted to show you, use one of these instead. Don't use that little pan punch. The hand punch will leave a lot of damage on your hand. So I've come across a couple of vineyards, and I was talking to one of the vineyard management people in Temecula the other day, and they were talking about doing their spaghetti line into their new vineyard they're putting in. They took out a bunch of Merlot and they're putting in Cabernet Sauvignon like what I'm putting in. What I'm doing is a little bit different. I'm going to do something a little different than that. Here is a diagram of a vine. You've got the scion is in the vine. The scion is about right here. The scion is where the actual Cabernet Sauvignon is going to be at. Then you've got your rootstock with the vines at the bottom. And this is more of a mature vine because I've got my cordons and then my drip system. The problem I have is I want to get water to that root system. It's down 8 to 10 inches and I want to get it to be vigorous. I want those roots to just go crazy. But if I'm using a drip system where I have dripping on the ground on top, it's got to go 8 to 12 inches before it gets to my vines, before it gets to my root zone. So what I'm using is something that I stole actually from the avocado orchards. There's avocado orchards south of us that were pretty vigorous up until the drought a few years ago. What they do is because avocados require a lot of water, they actually put pipe in the ground. They'll stick a pipe in the ground all the way down to the root system and stick up about 6 inches on top. They take their drip system, put it into the pipe, and now I'm feeding the root system, the root zone, I'm feeding it directly. So I said earlier that I wanted to get my vines vigorous. I want them to grow like crazy. So I am feeding water directly to that root system. Now, I'm only putting in one emitter to begin with. The reason I'm only putting in one emitter, I'm putting in this one emitter to get that root system down there to grow. What I want is I want a lot of the vines for the first 3 to 4 months to spend its time building its root system down deep. One is it promotes better growth on the vine. Number two, it's below my gopher level. So if I ever had a gopher in the area, the gophers aren't down 15 inches or 18, 20 inches. So what I'll do is I'm going to put the pipe in the ground. It'll go directly down to my root system, probably past the root system. It's going to stick up above the ground about 3, 4, 5 inches. And then I'm essentially going to stick the tube in there so that the tube will feed water into my root system directly. And then in probably the June time frame, I'm going to stick a second emitter in. And when I stick in the second emitter, just like on here, I'll have one emitter and a second emitter on the side, which will be dripping on top. That will give me growth on the root system above where this is, on that root stock, and will start growing out wide like this. So essentially, this is what we're doing. We're putting in drip line, 2 gallon per minute emitter, sticking it into the ground as you see there. I've already got, you can see some of them, I've got pipes already laid in some of the holes. I haven't got pipes in the rest of them. But I kind of lucked out because all of this pipe that I have was junk, literally. There was some old 3/4 inch pipe that I had laying around. I actually had, on the bad side, a negative side, I had 2 canopies this year that got caught up in the wind and blew away, literally blew away and bent the canopy system, so I can't use it anymore. So this is a piece of metal from one of the tubes in one of the canopy systems we have. So it's metal, it's probably going to start rotting after a while. I don't think these are aluminum, I'm pretty sure there's rust on them. So these are metal, so they're gonna rust after a while, but I'm only gonna use this for the first year, probably the second year, and then I'm gonna pull all the tubes out because the vine maintenance person that I talked to that was replacing all their Merlot grapes, he's putting in his spaghetti vine in the ground. He's putting it in about 6 inches deep, and he says that will stay there, he says, through the second year, and then they pull it out and just use the emitter. I'm sorry I went on for quite a while on this, but as I said, this is the most expensive part of our project so far, and probably the most critical in trying to get water to these vines, especially in 3 months from now when we start hitting some over 100-degree heat. So I wanted to make sure we were all in place in doing that. Let me take you over and show you where I put in a couple valves and a couple of other modifications I did going up the hill on the vines, just so you can see the actual vines in place. So if you've been following along so far, I mentioned earlier that we were lucky and we were able to get water to our vineyard because I've already got a set of valves here and I got a set of valves on the other side that were perfect for getting water to the valves, to the vines. These two valves were already here and they were watering some plants along the side here and some stuff that was on the hill. It wasn't really useful plants. So they're still here because I'm going to use them later for some companion plants for the vines. These are the two new ones I put in. The first one is about 60 vines. It runs the front part of the vineyard here. The second one runs about 35 plus vines and it will go along the fence all the way around. These valves, the water will come out of the valve, go down, go up these particular vines right here. Notice that this white is popping up. I don't like the white. One, these things rot. Over time, 4, 5, 6 years, if you bump these, they can break because they become real brittle in the wind. So if you see up here, what I do is and also number 2 is I don't like the look. I don't like the fact that they're bright white when you're looking at a nice mulched area. So what I've done is for this here, that one up there, way up the hill, I spray painted around it. You're not going to notice that white as much as that one down there, and it protects it from the sunlight so that the sunlight won't get to it. The other thing is here is I've got a few pipes already in the ground for my feeder tubes, so when we dig the hole out, that will be the feeder tube for the water to get down to my roots. So that's it for chapter 5. Our irrigation system is really important. I've spent a lot of time working out the details, getting the right in place, making sure I've got the right water, enough water going to each one of the systems. So we'll see how this all works out once we get the plants. As I said, we've got the plants sitting in the garage right now and in as cool as places I can get them. We should start planting sometime in the next week, maybe 2. We want to have all the plants in. Currently I want to have all the plants in the ground by April 1st. So that's the next set of videos. We'll be planting our vines. So please join us, follow along. We love to hear the comments. Until next time, this is Jeff. We're out. Go. I know. It's been really cold and the wind's been blowing really bad for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And Simon just doesn't like coming outside when it's cold. And when the wind's blowing, he doesn't like that much either. So when he comes out, he wants to eat a lot. Today, he's been eating pretty good. Probably hasn't had much to eat the last few days. This time of weather, the grass is not really long either, and it makes it really hard for him to eat the grass. He eats typically about 2 to 3 heads of cabbage or lettuce or something like that, along with 2 or 3 peppers, plus lots of rows of petals. We've got chard and all kinds of stuff growing in our garden over here also. So as soon as that stuff starts ripening, kale, then Simon gets a lot to eat when it's hot out. He's pretty active lately. But his favorite by far are yellow peppers. Him and yellow peppers he likes strawberries too, lots of strawberries. No, that's all I've got. Have this one. Don't get any closer. As close as you can get. You walk on most of your food though. You're walking on your food. Back up a little bit. There you go. See, you're walking on your food. Yep, getting up.